Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, we're going to react to the 20th creepiest photos linked with true crimes. Now, this should be a really interesting one. I mean, because I'm guessing it's going to be some cases where maybe somebody, was murdered maybe, and a photo was taken of perhaps the perpetrator just after they left the scene of the crime, things like that. And that photo then led to some, the perpetrator getting caught. I'm guessing it's going to be things of that nature. But to be honest, even if it's just, photos of something happening that didn't even lead to whoever committed the crime being caught, it's always interesting just to see these artifacts, because I find stuff like this really, really quite interesting. Like watching documentaries of this kind of thing. I don't know why.
And this photograph, discovered by police, would lead a heartbroken family to their loved one missing for almost 40 years.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at 20 of the creepiest photos linked to true crimes.
For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself.
For this list, we'll be looking at the most horrifying photographs that have come from actual crime stories. Did any of these photos chill your blood? Let us know in the comments below. Salah Abdeslam. On November 14, 2015, two men were captured on camera walking near a French gas station. One was wearing a black jacket and walking with his hands in his pockets.
These pictures were taken a day later at a Belgian petrol station.
The photo doesn't look like much, but it becomes terrifying once the context becomes clear. The man in the black jacket is terrorist Salah Abdeslam, and he had just helped commit a series of attacks in Paris.
The morning after the attacks, he's seen on surveillance video in northern France.
Occurring the night before the photo was taken, the coordinated attacks killed 130 people and injured more than 400. Abdeslam was the only perpetrator to survive, and he called his friends to pick him up. They did so, and Abdeslam was captured on camera while fleeing the country. He was later captured and sentenced to life in prison.
The next day, he's seen at a petrol station in France, waved through a border check into Belgium.
Christopher Wilder.
Oh my goodness.
Throughout
130 people. That's a massive amount. I wonder where he is. It wouldn't surprise me if he's probably a French maximum security prison, but I was thinking maybe he got sent to Red Onion, the Supermax in Colorado. But why would he'd probably be kept in France.
Of 6 weeks in 1984, Christopher Wilder embarked on a cross-country trip from Florida to California.
It was the beginning of a string of brutal and terrifying murders that spread out across the country.
Along the way, he abducted and sexually assaulted at least 12 individuals. He's also been linked to 8 murders, although the true number is likely higher. On April 1st, Wilder attended a fashion show in Las Vegas hosted by 17 magazine. In one picture taken on that fateful day, Wilder can be seen sitting in the background, wearing white pants and a dark jacket.
And who's directly beyond her, about 20 feet away, looking at her with what I call the look of a homicidal maniac, none other than Christopher Wilder.
An aspiring model named Michelle
Yeah, the way he was his eyes in that photo, he was just eyes like that.
Would disappear from this event, and her body was found 1 month later near a rest stop. Her death was later linked to Christopher Wilder, who had abducted her from the fashion show.
They announced the placement of Christopher Wilder on its famed 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list.
Death masks. Found in the Cleveland Police Museum are a series of death masks hanging on the wall. It's an unbelievably eerie sight. Not only is the concept of human heads hanging on a wall disturbing, but the death masks look eerily realistic. These grotesque decorations date back to the 1930s, when they were made in the midst of the city's most infamous killing spree.
The victims often went unidentified. The killer always escaped undetected.
The still unidentified Cleveland torso murderer killed at least 13 people between 1934 and 1938. Because most of the victims were transients, it was very difficult to identify them, especially considering what happened to their bodies.
In February 1937, the torso of another unidentified woman washed up on the shores of Lake Erie.
Enter these plaster death masks of the victims. which were displayed to the public in the hopes of someone recognizing their faces.
Oh my
Tyler
God.
Hadley's party.
Why is it, like, what is it that makes people, like some individuals, you know, not just capable, but they desire to kill? Like, what is it? Like, is there some kind of deformity in their brain, or maybe just some part of their brain is absent, like empathy, things like that? Like, what is it that makes somebody a killer? I genuinely don't know. Like,
Two young men pose for the camera, one of whom is holding a drink. That man is Tyler Hadley, and he had just killed his parents. In fact, their bodies were still upstairs.
Tyler Hadley and Michael Mandel took this picture Saturday night. It was the last picture Mandel thought he'd ever take with his best friend.
Hadley killed his mother and father earlier in the day, hid their bodies in the master bedroom, then used their credit cards to fund a party that dozens of people attended. The other man in the photo is Michael Mandel. Hadley told Mandel of the crime, and Mandel even found the bodies in the bedroom. Regardless, he stayed at the party and even took this selfie with Hadley. It wasn't until Mandel had left the party hours later that he reported the crime to the authorities.
After I found his parents, I knew it was going to be the last time I seen him. This is that look on his face. You could see the horror in his face.
John Edward Robinson.
Jesus, his own parents. I mean, to kill anyone is obviously evil, but his own parents, man. Who does that and has a party? Fuck.
Holding Tiffany Stacy. The photo is of poor quality, but the content is clear. A happy group of people are centered around a man wearing a yellow sweater. This man is holding a very young baby who is adorably dressed in white. But that baby is not his own. In fact, he killed the baby's mother and stole her. The man is serial killer John Edward Robinson, who took the lives of at least 8 people. He befriended a young mother named Lisa Stacy, killed her, and took her young daughter Tiffany, later posing for this photo.
She disappeared. Forever.
He then sold Tiffany to his brother and sister-in-law, who quote-unquote adopted her, for $5,500 in quote-unquote legal fees. It would be 15 years before Tiffany Stacy learned of her true identity.
Justice and closure for me is finding her remains and giving her a proper burial.
The Sean Moore crime scene.
Man, oh man. Like, it's not really a silver lining, but at very least, the people he sold the baby to, you know, actually, like, looked after her, I guess. Obviously, it was horrible, like, that it happened, but at least, you know, she wasn't abused. Do you know what I mean?
A child's bicycle lies abandoned on the roadside while a police officer speaks to witnesses in the background. This is a startlingly great picture, conveying a primal sense of fear and danger and letting you know that something is definitely not right. This bike belongs to Sean Moore, who was riding home from a convenience store when he was forcibly abducted by Ronald Bailey. The bike was left behind, a painful reminder of Moore's interrupted life. Bailey took Moore to a secluded cabin where he proceeded to drug, assault, and eventually kill him. Bailey was later found guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping and sentenced to life in prison. The Mad Bomber of New York. Everything about George Metesky is terrifying. Throughout the 1940s and 50s, Metesky earned the moniker the Mad Bomber, as he planted explosives in many public areas around New York. While these bombings never killed anyone, they left 15 people injured. Metesky was finally identified and caught in 1957 and taken to the Waterbury Police Headquarters. A photographer took a picture of Metesky inside his jail cell, and the result is absolutely blood-chilling.
Mate, just look at that face. This is a deranged lunatic right here.
Metesky glances out of his cell, a gleeful smile plastered on his face, and his eyes depicting a complete loss of reality. Metesky was found legally insane, with the judge calling him, quote, hopeless and incurable both mentally and physically. James Bulger.
Oh,
this famous photo...
This story always makes me sad. It really does. It's honestly one of the worst... Anyway.
Photograph depicts James Bulger, who is walking through a mall and holding the hand of an older boy. Another boy wearing a darker jacket walks in front. These two are Robert Thompson and John Venables, and they are in the process of discreetly kidnapping Bulger. The young boy was shopping with his mother at the New Strand shopping center when she briefly took her eyes off him to pay for some groceries.
It was just a split second, and I think that's going to live with me for the rest of my life.
It was then that Thompson and Venables swooped in and guided Bulger away by hand. His body was found 2 days later near some railway tracks. A man, his daughter...
They put it lightly. They left out a lot of critical information. When they say his body, he was chopped up. They had done unthinkable things to that little boy. This little boy was like 3 or 4 or something like that. And the two that did it got new identities and they're out in the public now. For me, I'm against that. I don't think they should be given new identities. I don't think so. You should live with that. You should live with what you did forever, I think. You know, the fact that they could be anywhere right now, anywhere, and they did that to a young child, I don't agree with that, sorry.
And a car bomb. For a period of about 30 years, Northern Ireland was embroiled in a political conflict known as the Troubles. This ended with the Good Friday Agreement in 1998. But this ceasefire was not honored by a splinter group of the Irish Republican Army called the Real IRA. As a form of protest, they planted a car bomb in the town of Omagh.
A bomb has exploded in the center of Omagh, and there are reports that a number of people have been killed.
It went off on August 15, 1998, killing 29 and injuring hundreds. In this photograph, taken shortly before the bombing, a man in a yellow sweater holds a child on his shoulders. Right beside them is the red car in which the bomb was planted. Both the man and the child survived, but the photographer was one of the 29 fatalities.
About 100 people have been injured. It's the worst bomb attack in 30 years of terrorism in the province.
Regina K. Walters. It's one of the most visceral photos in true crime. A girl wearing a black dress holds her hands towards the camera. An obvious defensive gesture that elicits great fear of whoever is behind the camera. That whoever was a man named Robert Ben Rhodes, who may have killed more than 50 women while working as a truck driver.
50?
He took this haunting snapshot of Walters shortly before strangling her to death, and Walters' decomposing body was later found on the same farm depicted in the image.
When I saw those photos, I said, this is Regina Walters.
The photo was later found by investigators in Rhodes's house. If it's any consolation, it was Walters' death for which Rhodes was convicted and finally put away.
Rhodes was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Leonard Lake's cabin.
50? Oh my God. That's up there with like Jeffrey Dahmer, isn't it? Why have I never heard of that guy? Jesus. 50 women.
This photo is quite unassuming at first. It's an aerial shot of a rubble-strewn building with various crew members working amongst the debris. It's a sight that millions of people see every day on their way to and from work. But this is actually the compound of Leonard Lake, and it hosted some nightmarish atrocities. Lake and his accomplice, Charles Ng, took their victims to this cabin in the Sierra Nevada foothills and committed horrible acts against them before ending their lives. It's believed that the duo killed up to 25 people inside the cabin, and authorities later found the likes of videotapes and human remains at the site. Cherie Miller. In July of 1984, a man named William Bradford met young bartender Cherie Miller at the meat market in Los Angeles. After convincing Miller that he was a professional photographer, he extended a proposition to take some photos of her. She agreed, and the two drove north into the desert of California.
Oh my God. You just cannot trust anyone in that situation. You just meet somebody and you go with them in their car. Like, it's so sad because you can't really trust people these days. Like, you know, unless you know them. And even if you know them, people can betray you. It's crazy.
Bradford took various photographs of Miller, who can be seen wearing a pair of denim shorts. Soon after the photos were taken, Bradford killed Miller and took her body back to Hollywood, where he abandoned it in an alley. Bradford was a predator who was out on bail at the time of Miller's killing. She was just one of a potential 28 victims. Dahmer's drum. It's amazing how a story can recontextualize a picture. This seemingly harmless photo depicts a blue plastic drum in the corner of an old room. Nothing too strange or malicious, until you realize what's inside the vat. It belonged to Jeffrey Dahmer, who is probably the most notorious serial killer in American history. One of Dahmer's survivors took note of the drum while inside the house and noticed a very strong and unpleasant smell coming from it. When Dahmer was finally caught, investigators uncovered the drum and found it was filled with hydrochloric acid and human remains. Dahmer was going full Breaking Bad and dissolving his victims inside the drum.
Great show, Breaking Bad, one of the best of all time.
John Lennon and Mark.
What do you guys think about shows like, Jeffrey, the Jeffrey Dahmer series and other shows that, kind of show like serial killers and stuff? On the one hand, I think it's kind of inappropriate. Like, on one hand, I guess it's entertainment, I suppose. But on the other hand, imagine you're like the victim's family and you've got to watch the person, someone playing the person who killed your kid or relative, having a show made about them, almost like glamorized. Like, people on Halloween were going up dressed as Jeffrey Dahmer. Like, imagine you lost a family member to that person. Isn't that a bit fucked up?
David Chapman. A very famous photo taken by Paul Goresh shows John Lennon signing an autograph while a man in glasses stands over his left shoulder. Thousands of photos just like this were taken throughout Lennon's career, but this one is steeped in malice. This photo was taken around 5 p.m. on the evening of December 8, 1980. Nearly 6 hours later, Lennon returned home and was shot by the man in the photo.
Lennon was shot and killed at about 11 o'clock last night outside his apartment building.
The very same man he had given an autograph to earlier in the evening.
Wow.
This, of course, is Mark David Chapman, and he had been planning to kill Lennon for months.
Wow.
While Chapman watched Lennon sign his album, he knew he would kill him just a few hours later.
Crazy.
Karen Sprinker.
Here's 5-year-old Jerome Brudos. He finds this pair of women's shoes. Something had made him pick those up.
Throughout the late 1960s, a man named Jerry Brudos killed at least 4 women in Oregon.
So he brings home this pair of women's shoes, and he begins to wear them around the house.
One of them was an 18-year-old named Karen Sprinker. On March 27, 1969, Brudos was wearing women's clothing and scoured a department store parking lot for victims. He found Sprinker and kidnapped her at gunpoint.
She was beautiful. I said I'd take some photos of her.
Is that when you invited her in?
Brudos then took her to his personal garage and made her put on underwear while he took photos. One of them has been released and shows a calm-looking Sprinker gazing into the lens. Shortly after the photo was taken, Brudos killed Sprinker and put her body into the Willamette River. Ted's tools. Few serial killers are as notorious as Ted Bundy. His name is synonymous with evil, and he may have killed up to 36 women throughout the mid-70s.
While detectives tried to track a man who slipped into a sorority house early yesterday and murdered 2 women.
The killer struck first at the Chi Omega sorority house. Police say he was armed with a heavy oak log.
Bundy was arrested in the early morning of August 16, 1975.
You know, when you just look at someone, like, they say that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but if I knew nothing of Ted Bundy, and I just saw this man, I just saw this picture, genuinely I would see something dark there, some darkness, because there's just something in those eyes that just screams not right.
By patrolman Bob Hayward, and when Hayward searched Bundy's vehicle, he discovered a treasure trove of suspicious material. Inside the Volkswagen Beetle, and later photographed for the world to see, were the likes of garbage bags, an ice pick, rope, gloves, a ski mask, and more. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough solid evidence to hold Bundy at the time, and he was promptly released from custody.
Washington missed you. Utah gave you away. Colorado lost you. I'm gonna fry you.
He went on to kill again before he was finally captured for good in February of 1978. The Columbine class picture. It's pictures like this that prove the volatility of life. You never know the types of people you're literally sitting beside.
Parents, hug your kids. Pray that, be happy that you're with them. Kids, grab your friends, hold them tight, and never be mad at people because it could happen in a second that they'll be gone.
This photo shows the Columbine High School class of 1999. In the top left corner, some boys can be seen making gun gestures with their hands. Two of these boys are Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, who just weeks later would enact the historic Columbine attack. On April 20th, 1999, Harris and Klebold killed 13 at their high school. The perps would also take their own lives, bringing the total body count to 15. Even more were injured, and Columbine became an international talking point. Rodney Alcala.
What can be done to, like, stop things like this happening? Because, you know, I don't know about the world stage, but at least in Europe, these things don't really happen. Like, you know, school shootings. Like, what can be done, like, in America to try and stop these things from happening? Like, I don't know. I'm genuinely asking this. Like, I just don't know.
Photos. A vicious man who killed at least 8. Rodney Alcala is famously known as the dating game killer, as he once appeared on the titular game show.
Between takes, he might find him skydiving or motorcycling. Please welcome Rodney Alcala. Rod, welcome.
While searching his home and his personal storage locker, investigators found over 1,000 photographs, many of which depicted people in sensual poses. 120 of these photos were eventually released to the public in the hopes of identifying the subjects. The released photographs are not explicitly sensual in nature, but merely depicts people, mainly young women, posing in artful manners.
Okay, that's not really sensual though, really. If they're just standing there smiling, I wouldn't really call that sensual, but then again, I've not seen all the photos.
Antonio police refused to take a missing persons report on Chris because she was an adult.
It's unclear how many of these subjects were killed by Alcala, but at least one missing persons case, that of 28-year-old Christine Thornton, was solved with the help of the photographs.
Her smile shared by a tragic list of young women and girls who trusted a charming stranger, only to discover a dark secret that began back in the fall of 1968.
A message from the lipstick killer.
Later that morning in the bedroom.
Again, another one of those situations where, you know, you just shouldn't trust people that you've just met. It's sad, you know, but you just really can't.
Police found a crumpled up ransom note left by the culprit. It read, "Get $20,000 ready and wait for word. Do not notify FBI or police. Bills in 5s and 10s.
While his conviction is controversial, the lipstick killer is thought to be Illinois criminal William Herons. The lipstick killer got his name from a particularly creepy crime scene, and this crime scene was famously photographed. Frances Brown was killed inside her apartment, and the perp left behind a message for whoever came across her body. Scrawled on the wall in lipstick were the words, "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself." Unfortunately, the killer did indeed strike again, kidnapping and taking the life of the young Suzanne Degnan. This occurred just 1 month after the death of Brown. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into settings and switch on your notifications. Ed Gein's house. The inspiration behind numerous fictional killers like Norman Bates and Leatherface, Ed Gein is a notorious body snatcher who fashioned himself one nightmarish house.
Oh my god.
Gein would dig up corpses from graveyards around Plainfield, Wisconsin, and use their bones and skin to make house.
My god, I've not seen this movie. That is one creepy. The way he screamed, I might have to watch this one. Oh my god. Hold on.
Behind numerous fictional killers like Norman Bates and Leatherface, Ed Gein is a notorious body snatcher who fashioned himself one nightmarish house.
Oh, that is so creepy.
Gein would dig up corpses from graveyards around Plainfield, Wisconsin, and use their bones and skin to make household objects. When authorities searched Gein's house, they found the likes of garbage bins, upholstery, bedposts, bowls, and lampshades, all of which were made from human remains. Many photos were taken of Gein's house, most of which depict a horribly cluttered space filled with trash and furniture. It's eerie to think how much of that stuff was made out of the recently exhumed. Perhaps the scariest picture is that of a chair upholstered with old and leathery-looking skin.
Ugh.
Check out.
Oh my god. Man, I need to watch something funny just to you know, get rid of some of the, you know, funk right now that I'm feeling. Just crazy. You know, the guy that went upstairs, saw the parents of his friend, you know, dead in the house, but didn't call the police immediately, went back downstairs, partied with the guy who just killed his parents, and then called the cops. Why didn't he call the cops immediately? And the last one, that scene from that movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that was creepy as hell. I love horror films, and it's crazy. Even though this film, you know, was made in the 70s, there was just something about hearing the way he screamed as he grabbed, oh my God. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.